Right. And it doesn't take, I mean, even a cursory look at the media and you see all these cyber attacks that China has hosted and all the penetrations that they've done inside thousands and thousands of U.S. critical infrastructure companies
Yeah.
to know, look, this is not, this has ceased to be funny. I mean, we are very much on the losing end of a lot of different types of warfare mechanisms that China's been using against us.
How big is the size, scope, and scale of what they are deploying towards us? Like, what can you describe what your best bet would be on the espionage operation against the U.S. from China?
Sure. Um, so China uses what we call a whole of society approach, right? You know, if you're in the CIA, you're recruiting a person, and that person provides information about some government, operation that you're interested in, some weapon system, blah blah blah. Uh, China provides an incentive system using the Chinese Communist Party to get people to go out and basically steal everything. So it's not just government secrets. That's the Ministry of State Security handles, the People's Liberation Army handles, in their Joint Staff Department, they or Joint Intelligence Bureau, they handle those specific components. But they're also state-owned enterprises. There are over 300,000 state-owned enterprises in China. So, and they're empowered, encouraged to go out and steal foreign technologies. There are individuals who come back with and actually go and brief a US company, brief their technologies inside China and say, I got this from Google, Google's AI from working in Google. And, here's what we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pull in investors inside China to do that. And the investors are sitting there looking at stolen technology. We've seen it numbers of times. So it's they provide a system that encourages that type of theft. So that leads to two things. Number one, it leads to espionage on a massive scale in the hundreds of thousands. I have a database alone in just what's become public. I have documented about 920 some odd number of cases of espionage or economic espionage. So, I mean, just, open what I've been able to document. So, I mean, it happens in the hundreds of thousands. We're not used to dealing with that. Our government structure is not set up to do that. So, the FBI, if they were dealing with this, if they didn't have all the immigration stuff and things landing on their lap and organized crime and drugs and everything else, they would be spending their entire time out working with companies to try and stop this or universities to try and stop this. But they don't. It's a losing game. I mean, with all the arrests they've made and all the people that they've thrown in jail for this, it hasn't slowed it down a bit.
What could we do that would slow it down a bit? Because it sounds like you're almost fighting off a tsunami with a teaspoon.
Right, and that's what in the FBI's own words, by the way, they had about 2 cases dealing with China per day. That's, yeah, once every 12 hours times 365, so 730 cases a year. And I've had this discussion with the FBI when they ask for help, and I say, no, because you're wasting your time, and now you want to waste my time. It's 730 cases, and each one of those takes months to resolve. Your thousands of cases in arrear, over 56 field offices. This is the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
The right way is to make it painful for China every time something like this happens. So they have a cyber attack. They conduct a cyber attack, as we saw recently, with numerous cyber attacks against critical infrastructure. Great. We're kicking all your companies off the U.S. stock exchange. All your state-owned enterprises where they get all their investments, they're gone. And we've talked to the Brits. They're not going to go on the London exchange or the Nikkei index as well. So starve them. No, you get no more capital from us for doing that type of theft. Well, you can prove. Now we don't have to prove anything. We're a sovereign nation, but we've seen you doing this,
Yeah.
and you're gone. I think you need to take an offensive with them. Everything they do, they need to feel pain. We take another approach. We build walls. We say, oh, let's build cybersecurity. I mean, we created a whole industry for cybersecurity, right? A whole industry to protect our companies and our government. Now, who pays for that? The
Taxpayer.
Americans. Yeah, the taxpayer. If it's a government, the taxpayer's paying for it. If it's a company, the consumer's paying for it. And all to protect against China. I mean, primarily to protect against China. Okay, how about we take an offensive there? Oh, really? You want to cyber attack us? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to impose tariffs on you for everything for one, two, three. And if you do it again, we're going to give a carrier to Taiwan. We're going to let them deal with it. We're going to base carriers out of the Philippines or out of Taiwan. Let them understand there are consequences for their actions, because right now it's playing a basketball game where every time you get the ball, you turn around and give it back to your opponent. You're on defense all the time. So,
I mean, what would it take to get those in power in our government to take those actions? I really like the stock exchange one. I hadn't heard about that. Plus, you pair it with the other international markets, like,
right.
Let's just turn the faucet off on your cash. The carrier one, whew, that would elicit a response for sure. But
Yeah.
why don't, I mean, again, it's like the worst held secret ever that these things are happening. Why don't we do anything?
Because we have hundreds of people in the Congress and the administration, and everyone thinks they're in charge. If you ever talk to a congressional staffer, you'll get that opinion pretty quickly. Everyone thinks that they're driving the train. And, it's a fairly easy, Congress should pass one law, and they should demand every administration provide a strategy for how they intend to deal with China, with goals, lines of effort, as we've had in the military, everything on how you're getting from A to B and what your metrics are for success. And you can have an unclassified, thing and with a classified component, and every administration should produce an update to that for the Congress every year. Because when I talk to senior officials, or when I talk to members of Congress and say, what's your idea of what the U.S. China relationship should be in 10 years? It's like a deer in the headlight. And I'm like, really? It's quite probably the most important relationship between nation states that we have in the last century. And you haven't figured this out yet? You don't have an idea of where you want us to be in 10, 15 years? More than anything, we need a strategy. We need to understand where we're going, why. And that doesn't mean putting China down. It means bringing it in to the world, where it obeys the law, where it's at an acceptable, code of behavior.
It's interesting. People will ask, well, why isn't Congress doing anything? They should look at how much time they allocate in their day to just getting reelected, because the stats show it's 60 to 70%. So the people that we have elected to represent us spend a vast majority of their time just trying to figure out a way to stay into office, not actually do things like this. So it really shouldn't be a huge question mark for people why these things aren't being figured out.
Yeah. And then when you look at congressional staff, which are not experts in China, right? I mean, they're not experts in anything. That they can't be, because they have, a congressman has to deal with farm issues, has to deal with labor issues, agricultural issues, labor issues, national security issues, and China, right? Unless you have Superman on your staff, these people what they do, what they wind up doing is they wind up coming to someone like me that they trust and say, Nick, can you write a speech for the congressman on this and dealing with China? And I write up a speech, and in the old days I fax it over and or email it over. Yeah, I'm not kidding. And that would be and that's what they do, because they have no. So that becomes a difficult thing. You have then companies pushing for some. No. If you do that, we'll lose 100 million our business in China. And you have experts like me saying, hey, this is a reality of what's happening. So it becomes a cluster.
Yeah. As technology is increasing, are you seeing, is China still heavily using human as well as they're using electronic means? Are they still focusing on human beings in the US, whether it's in colleges, whether it's, they're tasked with finding IP in companies? Is it still an equal balance? Or are they leveraging technology more?
Actually, let's say they're doing both, but they're also leveraging technology to enhance their human.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So the fact that the Brits say that they had 20,000 approaches from the MSS on LinkedIn, the French had 9,000, the Germans had 10,000, and they identified hundreds of cases where people passed them information. on LinkedIn, oh, start with this paper and stuff. So they leverage technology, you leverage software, marketing software, which LinkedIn provides available. If you would look me up on that software, you'd see all my circle of friends, contacts, people that I'm closer to, people that, that are further. So they're leveraging technology to enhance their targeting in particular capabilities, as well as obviously the encryption for COVCOM, for covert communications. But that said, the human effort is pretty aggressive. And we just saw that recently in the case of Chen Yuan